Hey guys, welcome back to Zane Customs. In this week's episode, I'm going to be working on my biggest project ever. So this project started off in Forger, which is a sculpting app for the iPad Pro, and there was no real idea behind it. I was just kind of sketching out some ideas, just trying to find a cool design, and pretty quickly fell in love with the design and got really excited about it. And I was only in Forger for a little bit, and then I quickly moved over to ZBrush to finish it out, which is where I am now. And also pretty quickly I ended up coming up with some pretty cool ideas for the sculpt, just because I really liked how it was looking, and like I said, got really excited about it. So a couple weeks ago I put out a video where I painted a alien sculpt that I did, and in that video the resin that I used to print with is clear, and after you cure it, it can yellow. And so I had my print and put a white primer on top of it, and it kind of resembled ivory to me. And for those of you who don't know, ivory would be like elephant tusk or bone, something like that. And just gave me some cool ideas for some sort of ivory inspired sculpt in the future. And as I continued to work on this sculpt, I thought it would be perfect for that idea. And so from here on out, my whole idea was this knight character. Everything he has would be his armor and everything would resemble ivory. And my second source of inspiration at this point quickly became Dark Souls. And for those of you who don't know, Dark Souls is a video game where you're a knight going around just trying to basically survive, and you got to fight a bunch of other knights, and it's a whole thing. But the game has a lot of really cool designs, and one aspect of the designs that I was really interested in is how they're not necessarily anatomically correct. A lot of them have arms longer than a normal person would, and just things like that. And it's a high fantasy game, so it makes sense they could be different creatures or races, whatever. But I just really like that idea. And then they all had really intricately designed armor that fit around them, and that's something that I have been wanting to do for a long time. So when I got into sculpting this, I decided to try and do that. And originally I had the idea of this kind of a somber looking knight kind of kneeling on the ground with a sword stuck in the ground. But you'll see pretty quick I end up changing that, and he's in a little bit more of an action pose later on. But in all honesty, I've never played Dark Souls. Again, for those of you who know what Dark Souls is, it's a very, very difficult game, and it's just not the type of game for me. I like the story behind it and all this, and I've looked up a lot about it. And really, the most interesting thing to me was just the characters' designs. And so I ended up pulling a lot of that into this design, looked up a lot of reference photos, and really I just wanted this to be something different, something you wouldn't see. So like he's a knight whose armor's made out of ivory, and then he's got this crown of spikes, and instead of having a face mask, he's just got this piece of cloth kind of hanging over his mouth, and just weird different things like this that I wanted to bring into the sculpt to really make it seem kind of unnatural, but still high fantasy. And I tried to bring that sort of unnaturalness out through every different part of the sculpt. You'll see here even his chest armor is not something that a real human could wear. Later on, when I bring in the actual model for the skeleton for this guy, he's incredibly thin and long and gangly, and there's just a lot of things that happen that a normal human wouldn't be able to wear this armor. And then every different piece of armor I'm also trying to make look unnatural or just different than something you would normally see. And I spent a long time on the design for each different piece of armor, and I would generally sculpt them in a symmetrical state, so just so it would look good. And then after that I would go ahead and pose it and move it differently. And there's a few pieces that aren't symmetrical. His thigh armor you'll see later on, but most of them are symmetrical pieces that I end up posing later. And really everything at this point, going to the armor, everything was kind of based off the sword, because that was the first thing that I got excited about. And originally why I brought it over to ZBrush so early on is because I was sculpting the sword, and Forger just can't handle certain things that ZBrush can. So I wanted to bring it over and start sculpting the sword up. And then after that, I wanted everything to, you know, match the look of the sword. So I'm going back and forth between looking at reference photos again for Dark Souls and real life knight armor, but then also just like looking at the sword and what I did originally, because I want it all to match and be one cohesive piece. And you'll see right here I'm already starting to repose him a little bit, because I'm just not happy with his kneeling pose. It's not really showing off the armor how I want, and so quickly I added in this guy, which for those of you who have seen my past videos, this is an Enderman, or Minecraft Enderman, that I sculpted months and months ago, and he just had that kind of really long, thin, gangly look that I was going for. And again, like I said, I want this guy to be unnatural, so you see his arms are really long, longer than a normal person's, and thinner, and it just makes him look kind of supernatural, and you know, maybe a little bit evil. And once I got the Enderman pose and decided that he's going to be the kind of the body or the base for all this armor to go on, then I just went back into each armor piece, and like I mentioned, this is all symmetrical right now, so I can just go in and add in all these fine details, and then when I'm ready I can pose it how I want, and I'm not too worried about it. This could be come issues if you do it with a normal and anatomically correct model that you're trying to fit pieces onto, because you could sculpt something and then it might be symmetrical, but when you move it over, the holes aren't actually big enough for his head to pop through, or just different things like that. But again, that kind of works in my favor, because I really want this whole sculpt to just look off. And another design sense that really started to come through, especially once I had the sword done, was a more organic look. Everything's kind of flowing, especially when it comes to his chest down into his abdomen, or all the armor on his torso. Really, just kind of, I want it to flow, and I don't want it to look like it is a living thing, but definitely is organic, or heavily inspired by organic materials, and want it to look more natural. And another thing that started to show through in the armor at this point was the red. And the Enderman body right now is red, but that's just because it makes it easier for me to tell what's the Enderman body and what's not when I'm posing him inside this armor. It's just having two different colors makes it obvious what's going on. But as far as the armor itself, I really started adding in a lot of reds, or more dark, more maroons into the armor. Again, just trying to copy what I had done on the sword, but taking it a little further and doing different things, different textures. And the sword, he almost has the red parts on the sword at least almost have a fabric look to them. They're kind of woven into each other, so that's something I tried to carry on throughout the rest of the sculpt too, and you'll see that a lot. And again, still having a very organic look when it comes to the actual ivory carved bone parts of his armor, and it makes it really easy actually, because I can sculpt everything in whatever's white or red. You know, I can mask it off differently and just add in different textures. And I've been going back and forth between how I like to color things, but for this one specifically, it was really nice to at least have a base color of white or red, so I can, you know, click and mask off all the white or mask off all the red, so I can just work on separate parts, because like I said, all the white is going to be the ivory carved bone, and then the red would be like fabric or different things that were kind of inlaid into the armor. I also wanted to mention that this video is probably the longest video I've ever done. I think it's upwards of 35 minutes. That is just, again, because this is probably the biggest project I've ever done. The only one that might be bigger than it is the very first YouTube video that I ever had on this channel, which is Thor versus Gore, who's a comic book character or a villain. And that project took me a long time, but it is mainly done in Forger, as before I really knew ZBrush. So it's not nearly as good, and again, that was my first video, so the video's not good either. This is probably my biggest and definitely my best project to date, and having said that, it was took me a long time, so trying to condense all the video down, I tried to condense it down to 15-20 minutes like my videos usually average, and everything was moving too fast and it was too hard to tell what was going on, so I ended up just going with a little bit of a longer video this time. And hopefully you guys like that. Let me know if you prefer them to be shorter. I can try and do that in the future, or if you don't mind the long ones. I think I prefer the longer videos just because it gives me more time to work on my sculpts and be really happy with them. But hop back into the sculpt. You can see here I'm starting to do some different things with his with the Enderman body, trying to make it look like cloth or some wrappings and different things. And what I'm sculpting right here are going to be 3 different pieces of what are basically going to be his boot or shoe or armor, whatever that's called. And sculpting them in different pieces like this makes it a lot easier to articulate it when I add it to the model, just to think about it as realistically as possible. How would this armor actually move? How would it actually be? It just makes it easier in the long run. And here there was actually going to be a 4th and a 5th part, and this armor piece was going to go on the sides, but I ended up adding these as knee pads instead of being part of the shoe. And that is just because they started to look like Air Jordans or some sort of basketball shoe, which was a cool idea to do, like a fantasy basketball player or something. But it wasn't really what I was going for, so I ended up taking those off and putting them onto using them for knee pads instead. And you also start to notice I've got a third material working into the design now. I got the white ivory and then the red fabric, and now there's some sort of iron or steel plating going on in the shoe here. And I wanted to add a third color just to help add some more variation. I just thought the sculpt needed it, and I originally went with this iron or a steel look because of the sword blade, and so I thought that would work. But I ended up changing that to a gold or kind of a brass, or just a really dark, dingy looking gold, just because I think it highlighted everything a little bit better. And then here I'm just trying to add some sort of a skirt design, just because I thought it looked cool. And I use the cloth dynamic function that's built into ZBrush, and I just use that to get a natural flow of the fabric kind of laying on his arms and legs. Then I go in and sculpt on top of that the wrinkles and different things. And here I'm adding in a cape, which was something that I had kind of hinted at the very beginning with working on my iPad and Forger, but it just didn't look good, and it was going to end up covering a lot of his back armor, which I wasn't really happy about, so I ended up cutting that out. And then now I ended up changing up his pants a little bit. I didn't really like the wrap look that I was sculpting on earlier. Just kind of went for more of what I was doing with the rest of the armor, with kind of woven fabric, and then had the inside. I'm trying to make the darker parts look a little bit more like leather and have some different textures going on there. And then also with this his shins here, I also trying to make that look a little bit more like leather as well. And again, when it comes to these parts, I still want to leave his shins incredibly thin, along with his arms just long and thin and unnatural, just again to keep that kind of creepy unnatural look going on. And then here I'm basically at the point where the majority of the sculpt's done, so I'm just going in here and doing maybe some final texturing, and then I'm gonna go ahead and do my final colors on top of that. So when it comes to texturing and coloring, I was going for that ivory look. So I have this kind of damaged, cracked look that I had on the sword, and I wanted to carry that over to make it look like this guy's been through some stuff. And what I usually do is trying to mask off all the cracks and darken them, and then use a yellowish tinge, kind of creamy color on top of that. And then my final is just a nice bright white to go over all the highlights. And I think that makes it look like ivory pretty well. It kind of looks a little bit like stone, some sort of marble, but I think it works pretty well. And then I did these, like I said, I turned everything that was steel into gold just because I thought it looked better. And I had the idea to go in and carve in all these little golden swirly designs on top of the ivory, almost like a gold inlay. And I didn't end up doing it because I was worried it'd be too much, but it's something that I'm kind of thinking about going back to the sculpt to do, because I I finished this sculpt. Obviously, I got this. I'm doing this video, but I'm still really excited about it and really happy with the way it turned out, and wouldn't mind going back and adding some few final details. And let me know what you guys think about that. You'll see at the end I'll have some good process photos so you can see everything really well. But let me know what you guys think about adding more gold details across all the ivory, specifically his chest armor, because I feel like that's a little too white, or if you think it just looks good how it is. And here we are working on his hands. His hands are possibly my favorite part of this whole sculpt. What I did, I just got a hand mesh and just sculpted it and posed them into the position that I wanted, and then I sculpted a wrist cover and then each individual finger joint. What I ended up doing is just copying them over and either stretching them to make them bigger or smaller to kind of fit onto whatever finger it is. So obviously his pinky is going to have smaller pieces on it or whatever, but I think this turned out so good. I'm so happy with the way his hand folds over the sword here, and the way all of the armor looks. I'm just super happy with this, and I think it really brought the sculpt together. It's something that I held off till pretty much last because I was nervous about it, but it ended up turning out really good, and I'm super happy with it. And then once I got that done, I'm just going on across some of the undersuit, which again I want it to look like this kind of thin black leather suit that he's got. So I'm adding in a leather texture and then adding in some seam lines and different things like that. And I actually added this other piece of red fabric on his wrist there that you just saw, just because I felt like his wrist was a little bit too exposed, so it looked like it was stretched and warped and like a bigger hand than his left hand was. So it just looked a little weird to me, so I added that, and I think it looked a lot better. And then here I got some turntables that I exported from ZBrush. I'm still having a hard time with my turntables. They're so fuzzy and low quality, and I don't really know what I'm doing wrong, but I really like them. They let you see a really good look of the whole model. But then of course I got some better, more high-res photos here. And yeah, let me just say I'm so happy with the way this sculpt turned out. I think it's the best work I've done yet. Yeah, just absolutely thrilled with it, and definitely something that I'm super excited about still. So I'm probably gonna end up printing this guy out and painting it up, and I'll do a video on that just because I'm so happy with it. But I would love to know what you guys think. Like I mentioned, this video is a little bit longer, so let me know how you guys feel about that. And yeah, I also want to mention I have a Etsy account and Instagram if you guys want to check those out. Anything you see me sculpt on this channel you could buy from my Etsy, and I'll have links down below if you want to check those out. And also just want to mention I super appreciate anybody willing to like, comment, subscribe. It helps me out a ton, or anybody who watches my videos all the way through, just super appreciate it. At the time of this recording, I'm just a little bit below 300 subscribers, and I've been doing this for about a year now, so just want to again say thank you to everybody that's helped me get that far and that watches my video and appreciates my content. Just want to say thank you so much. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.